Right.
All right. Well, hello, Fred. How are you doing?
Man, I'm doing really good. It's good to be talking to you again.
Yeah, yeah. So, Fred, you are our first returning guest on the podcast. So that's really fun.
Yeah,
Fred
what an
was,
honor.
yeah, absolutely. Fred was on in we're talking about the whole early part of the coronavirus lockdown and
hmm
quarantine or shelter in place or whatever you want to call it. So, give us an update. What's been going on with your church over the past couple months?
Well, we did in church service, live streaming as long as we could.
Hmm.
Um, we reduced the numbers. You're in Texas as well.
Yep.
We had about five at one time, and then the number reduced to just the pastor and us musicians, and then it went down to the pastor streaming from home.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He's been streaming from home, I think, now for about a month. Um, we're going on a month. I think May we were still at the service at church, and it was getting good too because I think I was talking to you about using iRig
Yeah.
initially when I came on. So I found another piece. I was using mine at home, and obviously I didn't. I had stuff to do at home, so I was glad to have that piece at the church.
Mhm.
But one Sunday, I think we only had it for one Sunday, and I was so upset because I was getting clipping, looking at my device, and it looked like it was clipping. And I went back and listened to it, and when I turned the instruments down, they were like not in the mix at all. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh my God. So I wanted to really perfect that. But now we're just kind of playing it by ear, to see when we going back. But because I do digital media, I've been helping on that end.
Right.
So I'm still working, still still working, trying to do what I can. But I mean, I'm not saying everybody come back, but I'm like, at least we could get our little unit back,
Yeah.
because that
Yeah.
was fun.
I mean, that's for my church. We actually started back in person worship on May 31st.
Oh
Um,
wow.
still with streaming,
Yeah.
and the numbers definitely were so much less.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, where for our early service, it's more of a traditional worship where a
hmm
lot of the older members are. We
Yeah.
typically have about 200 in that service, and
hmm
we're maybe at about 75. You know,
Wow.
and even for our contemporary service, where we have a lot of families with younger kids, it's
hmm
maybe 100, where we would be about 350 or so.
Oh
Because
wow.
a lot of the families with younger kids are staying home,
Yes.
just because, I mean, for me, my daughters are 11 and 8, so we can tell
Yeah.
them, don't hug, don't run up to people, and they'll listen. But you
Yeah.
try telling that to a 2-year-old, it ain't
Yeah.
happening.
Ain't
So
happening at all.
so
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean it's been interesting and it's just been really it's been different. Just because for us we were live streaming all of our worship services, and so
hmm
you get used to
Oh yeah.
doing that in a way that's really kind of different than before, where there weren't people, but now it's kind of your audience is almost a duality
hmm
because you've got the people that are sitting in front of you, but then you also have that online
Yeah.
online
Yeah.
congregation too. So
Yeah.
it's just been an interesting road to navigate along the way. So
hmm
yeah, it's been really interesting. But I
You
wanted to.
know,
I mean,
I'm
I'm sorry.
Go
Go ahead.
ahead.
No, go
Well,
ahead.
listen, I'm in favor of the way we found a way to have church online. I'm one of those people. I'm saying, y'all look at how we can get in and out in an hour. We can do
Mhm.
everything. We can handle all the business. We can make announcements. We can, all of that in an hour. And I was writing and I said, human interaction by itself is going to extend service. But I'm like, we're learning what we can actually live without,
Mhm.
in service. And so, even with you guys, y'all are you talking about that duality, and I love it. I get it. But when we go back, I hope we alter our services kind of in favor of that digital crowd.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think that's going to be something moving forward. I mean, really, I think about, I mean, my dad was a pastor, so growing up, it
Mhm.
was, every Sunday afternoon, he would make recordings of the worship service to take to shut-ins during the week,
Wow.
or videos or things like that, right? Well,
Yeah.
this is essentially what that is. It's,
Yeah.
not only just for an outreach, but also for those people who can't physically come.
Yeah.
I think this can be a great opportunity for ministry as well as, I mean, the world that we live in, people are hesitant to come into a church just because if they've never done it before, it's a new and different place, and you got
Right.
all your preconceived notions. Where here you can see that, oh, hey, these people don't have three heads and they're normal, and get to see who they are before you set foot in it. But
Hmm.
one other thing too, how's your congregation been responding to this? Are they kind of chomping at the bit to get back to getting together, or are they still okay with it?
We have a mix,
Yeah.
we have a lot. They jump on whenever the pastor's on, whenever they see the messages on, they see that, um, but then you also have the people, and I think this is an unintended consequence of the times, that we've also had people who, the active members, I don't know about giving, but I will say they're not visible during the broadcast.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I was guilty of that last week, because the sermon was pre-recorded. I watched it after service time, so
Sure.
to speak. And I was like, oh man, I don't want to get into that, because if I do, then I will lose myself at that hour,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and I
No.
don't want to be. I don't want to. But so that's kind of what we're seeing, is we're seeing the engagement not necessarily tail off, but it's different, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's just kind of an overall thing for everybody, right? We're kind of to that point where,
Hmm.
okay, let's get back to life, right?
Yes,
And I think
yes,
for my church, I was talking with my senior pastor today, and that was one of the things he said is, people are just, they're done. They're ready to be done and ready to be back
yes.
to what we've been doing, which of course it's going to be different. And for how
Hmm.
long, well, we don't know. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's an interesting time that we're in.
I'm
Um,
seeing a cool idea about people having signups, especially people with multiple
yeah,
services. The signups, and if you get signed in, I even saw a funny meme about somebody showing up to church late. It's like the look on your face when you show up and
yeah,
church is already full. So I thought that was pretty cool. And I even think that's a really good way to get engagement up,
yeah.
again.
Yeah. No, I mean, like for us, this past Sunday we had communion,
Hmm.
and what we did, because typically what we'll do is everybody goes up and takes communion. Well, we had
Hmm.
little individual prepackaged grape juice and
Yeah.
wafers, and you had to undo it, and it was
Hmm.
it was different. It really
Different,
was.
yeah, yeah.
I don't know if I can say I liked it, but it was just different. But it's better than the alternative of not doing it. So
Absolutely,
I look at it that
absolutely.
way and say, okay, yeah,
Hmm.
that works. All right. So the reason I wanted to have you back is
All right.
because not only just to catch up on where you're at and where things are at for you, but I've been following you on Facebook, and especially over the past couple weeks since the tragedy with George Floyd. I
Hmm.
mean, man, you've been really posting some great things on Facebook, and I think as we really wrestle with what do we do?
Hmm.
I think this is the conversation for many, and it seems like, I mean, yeah, we've had this conversation before, many, many, many
Yep.
times, right? I mean,
Hmm.
it's something happens where we see something videoed, and all of a sudden there's this uprising. This to me just feels different.
Yeah.
Does it feel different to you?
Oh yeah. It feels different because this time, now I have had to explain, even though it is on film, and I haven't watched the video.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to admit that now. I haven't watched the video, and I'll tell you why. Because I realized after watching the Philando Castile video that it was traumatic, but it was also making me feel a certain kind of way.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
I'll say this: the officer that shot Philando Castile, he was acquitted. He went to trial and was acquitted.
it was.
And so after that, during that season, I wrote an article and I said, before you watch another video, that was the name of it. And I had a specialist come in and I had her explain why, you know, explain the PTSD that we
Mm-hmm.
experienced when we watched that.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, so I said that to say that even though I have still had to explain it to certain people and explain why that's not an abnormality for Black people in police custody,
Mm-hmm.
Even sharing some of my experiences.
Sure.
I feel that it's different because now we have allies jumping in immediately
Yeah.
with Trayvon, with I'll just say the unarmed, where there was no controversy because that is not that's not normal or that it hasn't happened. Trayvon, Tamir Rice, he was a kid.
Yeah.
Jordan Edwards. With those cases, we've had to explain like, okay, here's the issue. This is what happened. This is why it's wrong. And people are like, I don't know about that. But this time, people are like, whoa, this is actually a problem. And
Yeah.
so, what on top of that, spiritually, I feel that this is part of the, we talked about this on the first one, the revival that's happening.
Yes.
This also a spiritual awakening. And so that's why it behooves us in the kingdom to be a part of it. It doesn't matter your skin color. And I'm thinking even now that we're having to look beyond skin color, and be
Mm-hmm.
united in the kingdom. That's why I feel like it's different.
Yeah, I mean, for me in all of this, not even just this, but just even going back to the whole, wearing a mask and all that with the coronavirus,
Yeah.
I've had this question from Scripture come back to me again and again and again, and
Mm-hmm.
it's that question that leads into the parable of the Good Samaritan.
Ooh,
Who is
my
my
neighbor?
neighbor?
Yeah.
Who is my neighbor?
Mm-hmm.
With wearing a mask, I have a good friend of mine who 2 of their 4 kids have cystic fibrosis.
Wow.
So yeah, that to me, it's okay. That's why I'm doing it. My mom is
Yeah.
81 years old. That's why I'm doing it. I'm
Yeah.
thinking it's not for me. It's not
Yeah.
because I need it. It's for other people. And
Mm-hmm.
again, with all of this going on, and I mean, just overall, in how we live our lives, whether it's about race, whether it's about how we talk to each other, all of this, if we keep that question in mind, and who is my neighbor?
Mm-hmm.
And if we think about the fact that we are all creations of God, we are all children of God, we are neighbors, plain and simple.
Yes.
Does not matter what color skin we are, doesn't matter what we look like, how we talk, how we act, doesn't matter. We are
At
all
all.
God's children.
Yeah. And it's hard to really read the Bible and see the divide that we have allowed to persist, especially in the church. I
Mm,
mean, First Peter 2:9, it says, "You are a chosen generation, the royal priesthood." No longer, people without. I can't remember the rest. I'm gonna look it up. But he was saying basically that in the kingdom now we have our identity,
right.
not an identity, but we have our identity in the kingdom. And so even listen, this is 400 years since chattel slavery was brought to the coast of the United States. 401 years. And
Mm,
so now you even now going in the Bible now, you even have people saying, oh, I see that there in the Bible. Okay, so even with that, our identity is in the kingdom. So you can say, well, oh, that was the children of Israel back then. But if you read the Bible, the children of Israel, those are the protagonists of the Bible. Jesus is a part of that. You get all of that. So, I think it's time that we look at ourselves and we ask not only who is my neighbor, but how can I be the neighbor Jesus wants me to be?
exactly. But I think we have to start with that first question, which is hard enough for so many. Just who is my
Who
neighbor?
is,
Okay.
yeah,
Once we get that, now we can then have that. You can't have that second discussion
yeah.
without having the first one, right? So you have to figure that out of, okay, so who is my neighbor? And I mean, yeah, for me, I'm white. I grew up in white everything, right?
Yeah.
And so for me to try and empathize, I can't. Honestly,
Mm-hmm.
I want to. I want to understand, and I struggle at that because I can't. Right? I've not had those life experiences. I've
Mm-hmm.
never had to say, "Am I going to get pulled over for driving while white?" No. Right? I don't have to
Yeah.
worry about those things. I don't have to worry about being profiled or whatever the case is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the biggest thing to me and the biggest question I'm wrestling with is, for someone who is white, what do I do? How do I be the best neighbor, the best ally, the best friend, the best person that I can be to bring encouragement, to bring help, to bring whatever's needed in that process.
I'm going to answer that, and this is the answer that I give when people ask me, "How can I find my purpose?" You got to go to God about that.
No, absolutely.
Because if we are to look at the example of the Good Samaritan didn't just help him up and pick him up;
Hmm.
he put him in a hotel,
Yeah.
and the Bible says that he was a guarantor for the man the whole time he was there. He
Hmm.
was leaving town, but he says, "Listen, I got him covered. Everything is on me till
Right.
I come back to town. I'll make it good." So we have to be willing to go that far,
Hmm.
to answering the question. And I think we'll find the answer based on who we are, where we are, and what we have.
Absolutely.
You
Absolutely.
know.
And I think, I mean, I know for me, this has been something that's been growing for a while. I mean,
Hmm.
I've felt that, just kind of wrestling with that. And,
Hmm.
I mean, a couple of years ago, probably about 3 years ago, I think it was, during the month of February, I was playing, spirit organ music based on spirituals, right, and
Hmm.
things like that. Okay, and it wasn't because it was cliche of saying, "Hey, it's Black History Month." It's more,
Yeah.
I want to actually bring about something positive. But here's the amazing part of that. Almost every arrangement that I played wasn't written by a black person
Wow.
of spirituals, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I decided last week. I said, okay, I want to really sit down and look at choir music, look at organ music, look at handbell music. Where is the black representation? Now,
Hmm.
looking at choir music, it's there. It's
Yeah.
small. It could be
Yeah.
more,
Very small.
but
Yeah.
it's there, right?
Hmm.
And then I started looking at organ music, and it was less, right?
Yeah.
But there's some. And
Hmm.
but I right away said, okay, I'm going to speak to this, looking at what music is out there.
Yeah.
I'm going to purchase it and I am going to use it in what I'm doing. Not just because, hey, it's June and this stuff is happening, because it's the
Right.
right thing to do. I'm going to come back to that in a
Absolutely.
second. Then I
Hmm.
went and looked at handbell music, and there's pretty much nothing, right?
Yeah.
And saying, okay, we got to do better. Not just because, not just to the sake of, okay, we gotta throw a bone here and make sure that it's okay. We got all the
Right.
boxes checked. We got this, we got that, we got this. No,
Hmm.
it's encouraging and building up those people who are doing this well. So on Sunday, I chose music that was based on spirituals that really wasn't the most upbeat positive things. It was more of when Israel was in Jesus in Egypt's
Oh
land,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Things like that were more plaintive, because to me our worship has to be a reflection. Now I use these as preludes before the service. So
Hmm.
Sunday afternoon, I post on my personal Facebook page. I said, "So if you were in worship today, this is what you heard, and I'm going to be doing this moving forward." And I got a comment from one of our church members who said,
Hmm.
"That's being very political."
Mm.
I was floored. I mean, I'm spending Sunday afternoon working in my garage trying to clean things up, and
Yeah.
I'm just feeling this weight, and I wanted to just start throwing things. So all I responded with was, "My pre-service music choices are not political."
Mm.
Because it's not. And that's the thing. To me, it's not about saying, "Hey, look at me." And that wasn't my
Hmm.
reasoning for doing it. It was
Right.
basically, let's start bringing to light what's out there. And so I actually found this gorgeous piece. It's called A Melody, by Samuel Coleridge Taylor, for the organ. And I sat down Tuesday and I played through it.
Hmm.
I was mad. I was mad that I had been playing the organ for 28 years and I had not found that piece of music until right now.
Wow.
But I tell you what, I'm going to use that thing like there is no tomorrow, because it is a beautiful piece of music.
Yeah.
But that's the thing that I think we, at least in the church music world specifically,
Hmm.
can do, is basically we kind of get this tunnel vision, right?
Yes.
We stick with what's comfortable.
Hmm.
And I think there's good in comfort, right? I mean, we,
Yeah.
we like
Yeah.
being comfortable.
Hmm.
but we don't grow when we're
No.
comfortable. We don't
Mm.
really grow. It's when we're I mean, look at what has happened over the past 3 months for our churches, for just our world, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've been uncomfortable, and we have
Very.
grown and learned and done new and different things because we've been uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I think, to me, that's kind of why this feels a little bit different. Is not only because of everything else that's gone on, but I think just because we're already in a state of being uncomfortable overall, right? But
Right.
also, I think there's enough momentum, if you want to call it that, but
Yeah.
there's enough push.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we need to, and I'm talking we as we in the white
Yeah.
people. We have to be more compassionate. We need to be more caring. We need to just not knee jerk respond to Black Lives Matter as all lives matter. Well, yes, but all lives matter, yes.
Yeah.
Black Lives Matter, yes. Now, of
Mm.
course, that we can have conversations about that. Of that that phrase has probably been co-opted and politicized and more
Right.
than it should be. But the point is still there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Black lives do matter, plain and simple.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I don't know. For me, I haven't seen as much from churches in a response to this as
Mm-hmm.
probably should be, and I think it's, I don't know. I'm not a pastor, so I don't get to speak to that, which is probably a good thing because I would say lots of not so positive things. But I think we have to be different. We have to think different. We have to do
Yeah.
different. And I think it's not just blanketly saying, okay, we're sorry for what happened in the past and we move forward and we go back to our everyday thing.
Yeah.
We have really saying sorry doesn't change anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's we have to be intentionally different in how we choose to live our lives, in how we choose to walk together with others, and it's going to be uncomfortable. I mean, for the past week and a half that I've been writing blog posts, it's been uncomfortable,
Yeah.
because but not in a bad way, really. It's been more of, okay, this is challenging for me, and I think it's challenging for others, but it's challenging. I think in the long run, it's going to be challenging in a good way.
Yeah. We have to rise to the challenge. We have to rise to the challenge of being uncomfortable. But there's a lot coming out of this, and I'll talk in the natural. Well, I'll kind of prop that up against the spirituality here. In the Bible, when you done people wrong, part of being sorry was restitution.
Correct.
And as far as, see, people are asking, what can I do? And we say, okay, well, understanding is one part, but understanding is not the end. Understanding is the beginning. That's when you say, oh, okay, I have contributed to a system that oppressed your people.
Correct.
Yes, you have. Yes, absolutely. Yes, you've been a benefactor of a system that, disproportionately, um, affects me, right? So when you think about restitution, the question is, what does restitution look like?
Mm.
In South Carolina, when the concept of 40 acres and a mule was introduced, it was quickly done away with.
Mm-hmm.
That was only South Carolina.
Right.
They didn't even award South Carolinians 40 acres and a mule like they were supposed to. And so here we are now in 2020, and Congress says in 2008, 2009, somewhere in there, sure, we'll apologize for slavery, but we'll take reparations off the table. That's the only way we'll apologize.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're living under. Now, if you're righteousness says we got to do something.
Right.
That's the weight of right. That's the yoke of Christ saying,
Mm-hmm.
I feel compelled to contribute to this cause. I feel,
Yeah.
and then here's the rub though. And this is why you don't hear a lot of white pastors speaking about it, because part of that restitution is power.
Yeah.
And so how can it be that I want to be right and I want to do the right thing, but it's going to cost me what I'm not willing to give?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's going to cost me not being the favorite voice at the table. It's going to cost me position. It's going to cost me some political power. It's going to cost me literally money. When the Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil, there's a lot of truth in that.
Oh yeah.
And you talking about Black Lives Matter, somebody was talking about that today and was like, who's funding that? I said, listen, if you don't agree with Black Lives Matter, find what works for you and come on.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to get out there, march and holler Black Lives Matter. It's enough for you to grab and be a part of this movement without trying to discredit what's going on right now. And that was a Black person that said it. And so what's happening is the recognizing of it, not so much a reckoning yet, but recognizing what the cost of it is going to be. You say, I want to do something good. Yeah, I want to do something great. Yeah, but at the cost of your comfort, that's when Jesus asked the young man, he said, Jesus, I follow all the commandments. I do everything right. What yet lack I? And he said, sell all you have and give to the poor and follow me.
Yep.
The Bible says he went away sad. It didn't say he came back after he did it.
Exactly.
It says he went away sad. And so I looked at that and I said, this man, we don't even know his name.
Right.
But he could have been one of the 12. The Bible names all of the 12. It even names Matthias, who was, they cast lots to add him, right?
Yeah.
And scholars may say they weren't supposed to cast lots, Matthias don't count, whatever. Okay, that's fine. Y'all can disagree on that. We still know Matthias's name though.
Right.
But we don't know this young man's name who said, what yet like I? And when Jesus told him, sell all you have, give to the poor, and follow me, Jesus was telling him, I got something better for you. Or you could look at it and say, the reward was, come follow me. I'm going to etch you in the annals of history. Yep. I'm going to etch you in the annals of history in the kingdom, in world history. But he didn't want that. He refused that. And so that, I think, that's why we make progress and then we stop. We make progress and then we stop because the mirror comes up. This is what you have to do. Oh, I ain't willing to do that.
Right.
And I'm going to speak on this. I'm going to give it back to you. As far as music goes, I'm going to mention two names, Moses Hogan and Glenn Burley.
Yes.
Those two guys are fantastic composers. And I hope you can find some organ music from them. I know you can find those arrangements. But those two, I was listening to Glenn Burley yesterday. But as far as, doing that, and I'm going to use a word that's kind of been, it's put a bad spin on it in the church, and the word is inclusion. When we work to find what's different, but good. When we say inclusion, now you have people saying, oh, you just want to have one faith and one heaven and nobody goes to hell. No. Inclusion is we take what's different, what God made different, see the good in it and use it.
Oh, absolutely.
Or spirituals go. When I was in Germany, when I was in France, I was in Europe, those people, that was what they knew gospel music to be, spirituals. Yeah. Before the Thomas Dorsey era. They loved that. They were introduced to that through Edwin Hawkins and Oh Happy Day. But anything before that, I'm not going to say Dr. Watts because that's something for us in the Black Church in America. But you got Dr. Watts, and I forgot the young man's name in Ireland or Scotland. I forgot where he was. He was kind of the European, the Irish equivalent of the Dr. Watts. So when you get into the historicity of our music, and just how deep it actually is, and you say, wait a minute, it's been there the whole time. How come we haven't? And then you say the oppression of what we have is deeper than we even know. Absolutely. I've heard a historian say that jazz is the classical music of America.
I definitely can see that. Definitely.
It's the classical music of America. But when you hear classical music, when you think classical music, you hear Baroque music. You hear talk about the Romantic period, the Baroque period. That's all you hear about is those guys in Europe. And it's been forsaken. It's like an afterthought. You have to study jazz, but you have to study classical music, but jazz is an elective. And so it's like, okay, so the day of reckoning is coming close, but the first step is recognizing that. And I'm even convicted, as I was talking about the young man, when Jesus says, he said, what lack I? What yet lack I? And so I'm compelled this is it. The ministry of reconciliation. We have the ministry of reconciliation, and that's where we meet uh,
Absolutely.
as believers. We're on different ends of the spectrum, but we have the ministry of reconciliation, not just to each other, but reconciling humanity to God.
Absolutely.
We work together. Whether you black and I'm white and you black, we work together.
Absolutely.
For the ministry of reconciliation, reconciling men and women to God, and that's most important. But we can't do that when we don't view each other, you know, as equal.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly it. I think even too what you were talking about, that inclusivity, it goes back to Jesus. Right?
Yes.
Jesus saying, "I am the way and the truth and the life."
Yep.
That's that's inclusive. It's no one comes except through me, right?
Come
It's
on.
let's go, right?
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's the mentality that we've got to have. And so I think what we have to do is look in the mirror, like you said.
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
look at what is it going to cost, um,
Mhm.
and what are things that we can do. I mean that's the thing for me, right? I mean I'm a white Lutheran organist, church musician.
Yeah.
What can I do differently? How can I be different? Well, I can write blog posts about it. I can do the things that are within my control.
Yeah.
I can read, I can learn, I can grow, right? And most
Mhm.
importantly, I can go back to scripture and say, what are you saying about this, God? How am I supposed to love others, and how have I failed? What
Mhm.
do I need to do differently? And what do I need to be different about in my thoughts
Mhm.
and in my actions? And how do I speak up for those who aren't being spoken up for?
Mhm.
And that's hard. I mean,
Yeah.
I've really been wrestling with. I mean, like I said, it's been a longer period than just the past couple of weeks, but I've really been wrestling with that of just what does that look like? What does life look like? I mean, is it's obviously going to be different,
Mhm.
but is different bad? I don't think so. I think
Mhm.
there's a lot of good that can come out of that. But the hard part is there's it starts with you, right? It starts with
Yeah.
one person, but then it starts with then that gets passed on to other people. And so a part of that, like you were saying before, you make progress, and then you stop, right? and
Yeah.
and and I think that's the fear that I have in all of this, is that okay, this is what's going on, this is what's being talked about, and then what happens in a couple of weeks or months when the next topic of conversation comes,
Oh man, the news
right?
cycle changes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, what happens, right? Are we going to make progress and make progress, and we're making more progress than before, but then what, right?
Yeah.
And so that's been my prayer in all of this, is that we continue to keep making progress, not only as individuals, but as a nation, as a world, that we
Mhm.
are different, and that this isn't something that just is that cycle of okay, we're moving forward, and then we stop until the
Then we
next
stop.
time.
Yeah.
I don't want there to be a next time.
I mean, after
I'm
George
done with the
Floyd, how
next
much
times.
worse can it be?
Right.
I mean, how much worse can it be? I mean, we've seen kids shot,
Yeah.
by police officers. We saw a man strangle, and let me say this to your audience too. I'm pro police. All right, I'm one of those people. I'm a law abiding person.
Mm,
Okay, so when I talk about the police, I'm talking, on the wrong side. All right.
right.
Do
Right.
we need to divert some funds to address other social issues? Yeah, we can talk about that. I think we should. You got mental health, you got homelessness, that have things that have been criminalized, right? But that's not on the police. That's on the city
Hmm.
council. That's on
Correct.
legislation to do that. So yeah, and let me say this too, as a young black person, my home was shot into twice. I'm not a gang member. My family is not a gang member. Our neighbors were in shootouts, and bullets came into our homes.
Okay.
So I'm a person who, you know, if I was shot, the police would have showed up and done that, right? So when I talk about the police, my angle is not anti-police, is not in favor of
No.
lawlessness. I just want things done right, and I think all of us, if you're a person that wants things done right, this is your moment. You don't have to preface saying and doing the right thing with a whole dissertation.
Right.
You don't have to
Absolutely.
defend doing right and saying right. I call it common sense. This is a common sense movement. And I think that's also why it's different, because it's registering to people, wait a minute, this is happening in America?
Hmm.
You know, when they wrote the Constitution of America, this was going on.
Right.
Slavery was going on. And you had people who were abolitionists like Thomas Paine, who spoke out against this regularly. In Philadelphia, they had a whole, anti-slavery movement going on in Philadelphia,
Right.
1774, 1775. Preachers, let's talk church. Charles Spurgeon, who was anti-slavery in Britain.
Yep.
They hated him in America. They burned his books. They said, if he comes to America, we're going to kill him.
Hmm. Yeah.
So this is not new, but it's new in this moment, because we now have a responsibility to try and get it right in our time, to try to make things right in our time,
Hmm.
and try to go further than we've gone before.
Right.
You talked about being uncomfortable, Craig. Listen, we're going to have to be uncomfortable for a while. We're going to have to, as believers, suffer together.
Yeah.
Because we're going to, you may be, you may have a difference with something that I say, down the line. You might say, well, I don't know, Fred. That's a little too far, but, or I might say, Craig, man, I thought you got it. I thought you were with it. I thought you were woke, but we have to also have temperance in this movement. We have to have the single cause of saying we want it
Right.
done right. Because guess what? We under the guise of the kingdom. When I die, I hope to see you in heaven. And when you die, I hope you want to see me in heaven. And
Absolutely.
everybody we know, because we, again, have the ministry of reconciliation. And before I was on with you, I was watching a friend of mine, and she had a lawyer on, police officers, and she was saying, the idea of justice in the kingdom is different than justice in America. And I don't know. I think that if we say thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, then I think we have the responsibility of trying to make what God thinks happen.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Not legislate it so much, because you can't legislate hearts,
No.
but at least be the example to show
That's
that.
exactly it. It's the example. It's how we live our lives, and that again, going back to this is the light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. Right? No, I mean that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's being that light for others to see,
Yeah.
and saying there can be a different way. There needs to be a different
Oh,
way.
yeah. Has to be.
Yeah, and so I think that's exactly it. And so as we move forward, I think that's the biggest thing, is just, again, choosing to not let it go, just to
Yeah.
keep holding on to, okay, what is the most important thing, like you said,
Yeah.
that singular focus. And I think it seems like, again, it just seems different, and it seems like there's that momentum there that is going to keep it moving forward. I hope. I mean,
Yeah, I was in prayer today, and I spent a little more time because I'm working on a project,
yeah.
and I prayed about that and all the aspects and angles going on with that. And this evening, I was like, man, I did good in prayer today. I prayed longer than I normally do, and I'm like, yeah, that was a first. But the Lord said you didn't really touch the issues that you're talking about all the time.
Hmm.
You didn't really get to the meat of it.
Right.
Yeah, you spent a lot of time in praying, but you wasn't saying nothing. And so that's that focus,
Yeah.
that singular focus. When Jesus said, Lord, make them one, you know, it can't just be me anymore praying about it, and thank God for you today praying about it, because when I didn't, you were praying about it, you know,
Absolutely.
and the singularity of focus, that's what's going to get us there. That's what's going to get us
Amen.
there.
Amen. That's
Yeah.
exactly it. That's exactly it.
Man.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Fred. This has been just a great time. I really appreciate you coming on and chatting, and man, I'm going to keep you in prayer,
Yes,
and
sir.
as you continue to minister, and hopefully you guys will be able to get back to meeting in person soon.
Soon,
or
yeah.
at least some semblance of together, right?
At least the band, at
Yeah,
least bring the
exactly.
band back together.
Isn't that the truth?
Oh
All
man.
right. Well, thanks so much, Fred. Really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you, Craig. I appreciate you for reaching out. I'm gonna keep you in prayer too. I'm gonna do better about that.
Thank you. Thank you.